All right, let's continue with the solving arduous task problems. We have amusement park ticket prices. That's where we're starting. The scatter plot shows the cost P in dollars of an admission ticket at a particular amusement park from 2000 to 2015. Which of the following is the best model for the price of admission ticket where T is the number of years since 2000? So really just taking a glance, these are all linear equations. So we're looking for a straight line somewhere along there. Okay, so we need to find the equation of the line. So this y-intercept is somewhere probably between 40 and 50. So we can eliminate these ones that have a y-intercept that's not between 40 and 50. So remember our y equals mx plus b. M is the slope. So the number multiplying by x is the slope, and the number that is not with the x is the y-intercept. Okay, so once you've eliminated these two, now we just have to look and say, what is the slope closer to being? Is it 3.7 or 0.3? Well, if we start at 43 and go out 10 years, because that'll be kind of easy, how much did we go up? So that looks almost like about 83. So we went up about $40 in 10 years. That would be a growth of 4. So 3.7t is much closer to that. So notice I didn't actually have to come up with an equation. I didn't have to do all the calculations. If I were doing this by hand, I would probably find 2 points and then find the slope and just find the equation of that line through 2 points, just eyeballing it. But because we had our options, I didn't have to do that. If you were to have to do that, you'd have to go y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 from the 2 points we chose. And then you'd go y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and that would give you the equation. All right, a plot in the time and intensity, luminous intensity plane shows the luminous intensity I in candelas of a strobe light t milliseconds after activation. Which of the following equations best models the relationship between I and t? So again, we're going to look at what graph we have here. This looks like a parabola. Please note that for a parabola to open downward, it has to have a negative in front of the x squared. So that's the first thing I'm going to look for. If I were to square this, I would have t squared minus 85t plus some, well, we'll say 42.5t squared over 340. The key point is here, this is positive. And so with these two additions before them, this would be a positive t and would have a parabola that opens upwards, so it's not these bottom two. And so I look at the other one, and I have a negative in front. Now remember, this is similar to, although written in a different order, our function, our transformations, x minus, let's just say h squared plus k. We'll throw an a in front. So a is actually negative 1/340th. So that's the vertical compression. This reflects it. And so my center should be at 42.5 and 5.3. So 42.5 and 5.3. So this is just looking at the equation for a parabola in vertex form. So we've got the vertex here at 42.5 and 5.3. And so because we shifted from the original vertex, the origin, to the right, we want this one that has a negative inside. So again, all we're looking at here, this is a transformation problem. The negative flipped it upside down. The subtraction inside means we move it to the right. This means we move it up, and this gives us a compression. Now notice that 340 was the same in all of them, so we didn't have to worry too much about it. This is a transformation problem. Sometimes we'll see questions like this and we're like, how am I supposed to figure out? I don't know how to calculate that. But if you just think of it as, okay, we have some options. This is a transformation problem. They're not asking me to come up with it out of nothing. I can just look at the transformations and choose which of the answers have the transformations I know need to happen. In an xy plane, the circle has center hk and a radius of 5. What is the equation of the circle? Okay, so let's review what we know about circles. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. That's the general formula. And you will be asked about this often on a test where you have to solve arduous tasks. H and k are the center of the circle, and r is the radius. Okay, so we're told the radius is 5, so we're just going to check. Yep, all of these have 25, so that really doesn't make a difference. Now, I'm going to talk about how we can find this answer, but first let's just pretend we're taking the test. HK is over here, so we had to shift to the right a little bit. So I'm going to eliminate these two answers. Okay, when you're on a timed test, you can't always solve things directly. Sometimes you just have to cancel things out. So the question is, did you shift? The center here would be 3, 7. The center for part D would be 3, 11. If I went all the way up to 11, would this be the center of the circle? No. And so my answer is C. Okay. To calculate this, we'd have to do something like this. Say, okay, the radius is 5. We would assume, well, we know from a geometry property that this is perpendicular, and it cuts it in half. A radius perpendicular to a chord cuts it in half. So we have 11 minus 3, so this is 4, so this is 3. So it does go to the right 3 and go up 7, which corresponds to C. Now, don't solve it that way. Look for what you can, eliminate what you can because of what you remember and know about the equation of a circle. All right, if m squared plus p squared equals x, and 4mp equals y, which of the following is equivalent to 4x plus 2y? Sometimes there are shortcuts here. Sometimes these get messy. We're just going to have to go with it. So we've got x. So 4x would be 4 times m squared plus p squared plus 2 times 4mp. So we can solve this out. If you get to this point and you're like, oh, this is going to take a little bit, you might want to flag it and come back, especially if it's towards the beginning. But this would be 4m squared plus 4p squared. Now you may ask, why am I doing this way? Because really this sets up a perfect square trinomial. Okay, and I kind of had that idea already because all of these are binomial squared. So let's change this slightly to consider what's going on. Let's say I have 3x plus 5 squared. To do this, I square the first part, 9x squared. I square the last part, and then I multiply these together and double it. So that's 15x. So I'm going to have 30 x in the middle. Now I did that forwards with a binomial that we're familiar with so that we can go backwards. So I need to square root this, and that gives me 2m. I need to square root this, and that gives me 2p. And then I need to check, if I multiply this together and double it, will that give me that middle term? And it does, so I should be having 2m plus 2p squared. And that's b. If you weren't able to see that and how to factor that, it would require multiplying these out, which would not be a great use of time unless you have time at the end and you've done everything else you can. You'd have to multiply them all out and try to match what's there. Okay, what is the value of sine of 60? This is from our unit circle. Okay, so you need to think through what our unit circle says. So here is 0, here is 90 degrees, so this is the 60, 45, 30. So sine is the y value here, and we have 1/2 square root of 3 over 2, and so our answer is D. Now if you have a calculator and you type sine of 60 in and you get a decimal, you would have to go through and figure out which of these match. Now it would be positive, and it's obviously not 0.5, so it shouldn't be too hard. But that's where this comes from. A circle has a circumference of 4 feet. An arc, x, in this circle has a central angle of 240. What is the length of x? Okay, so let's just draw this, make sure we understand what's going on. Circumference is the distance around the circle. And then we have a central angle of 240, which is about like this. And we are looking for this arc x. If you remember from geometry class, an arc is found by taking the circumference times the central angle divided by 360, if it's given in degrees. Now it already gave us the circumference, so all we're doing is we're going 4 pi times 240 over 360. Now 240 over 360, I know that that equals 2/3, so it looks like 8 pi thirds should be my answer. If 2 plus 7z equals negative z minus 4, what is the value of z? Sometimes they will say things like this, and you might get a little confused, and you're like, what do you mean, what is the value of c? All you're asked is you are solving for z. Solve for z. And notice they didn't put an x in there either, it's a z. So I'm going to add z to both sides, minus 2 from both sides, so that's 8z equals negative 6. Divide by 8, 0 equals negative 3/4. Which of the following is equivalent to the given expression? All right, this is a good practice of our exponential rules. Okay, and they've given a lot of options to make a mistake here. So this is 9 raised to the 100 power raised to the 1/2 power. Remember, if you have a fractional exponent, so if I had a raised to the m over n, this is power over root. So a square root is 1/2. So that means, and we can multiply these, so that's 100 times 1/2 is 100 halves. So this is 9 to the 50th power. Okay, now that would be the first place I would go, and then I'm like, oh wait, none of these have the same value, and this will likely be given to you when you don't have access to a calculator. And so what we can do next is say, oh, 9 can be rewritten as 3 squared to the 50th power. So I'm going to multiply these again and get 3 to the 100 power. and that will be C. Okay, so exponential rules, remember, if you have x squared times x cubed, you add the exponents. X squared raised to the third power, you multiply the exponents. X cubed over x squared, when it's dividing, you subtract the exponents. 0 power equals 1. Anything raised to the 0 power except 0 will give us a value of 1. And then we talked about the power over root already. Nadine has 4 gallons of gas in her car. If the fuel efficiency of her car is 23 miles per gallon, how many miles can Nadine drive before running out? So 23 miles per 1 gallon. I like to think of these problems to help me set this up properly. I like to think of these as dimensional analysis. When I did dimensional analysis in high school, I was taught a picket fence method, but however you want to think about this, 4 gallons, I want to end up with an answer of miles, and so I need the miles to be left and the gallons. All we're really doing here is 23 times 4. And that gives me 92. So 92 miles. And I think when you enter these, you don't write units at all. Usually the units are sometimes written off to the side. It's just the numbers. Which of the following radian measure is equal to 150? So remember, if you have 150 degrees or any degrees, you multiply it by pi divided by 180 degrees. So again, the degrees and degrees, these units will cancel and we'll just be left with radians. So 150 over 180. If I type that in my calculator, that can simplify it. If not, if I don't have my calculator, I'll have to simplify it on my own. But this is 5 pi 6. What is the value of x in the figure? Okay, this is reviewing a few geometry topics. If both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, then we have a parallelogram. Okay, and it looks like a parallelogram. They're not trying to deceive you at all with how it looks. So this is a parallelogram. That means these are parallel sides. In parallel lines, alternate interior angles are congruent. So this doesn't take any calculation. It's just 32. You just have to recognize those relationships. Okay? If you get to relationships in geometry that you don't know, 98% of the time their drawing is drawn to scale. So you can take a guess. Which of the following is equivalent to 3 plus 3 over a over 3 over a? To do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the fraction. Okay, we have fractions in the top and bottom, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the common denominator, a over a. Okay, let me show you what this looks like step by step. So I've got the numerator times a, so I'm going to have 3a plus 3 times a divided by a. That cancels out. So I've got 3a plus 3. Okay, now I'm going to multiply it on the bottom, 3 over a times a. The a's cancel, so I've got 3. Because every term here has a 3, I can cancel them out. And algebraically, one of the ways to look at this is I factor out a 3 on top and divide by 3. So my answer is a plus 1. This problem does not work well to try to work backwards. So you're just going to have to work forward. Fractions in a fraction, if you get rid of those, it's going to simplify things out. And multiplying by the common denominator is one of the best ways to do that. Devin is a landscaper who needs to prepare different types of grass seed for his customer's yard. bluegrass seed costs $2 per pound, while drought, sometimes when I read a question like this, I kind of look ahead and look at the question first. So, hey, grass seed total 68, together weigh 25 pounds. How many pounds of bluegrass seed did Devon prepare? So I'm like, okay, I'm setting up a system of equations. Okay, so I'm going to say B for bluegrass seed is $2 per pound, plus $3 for drought resistant seed. Okay, and then I've got the pounds of bluegrass plus pounds of drought resistant. These are my two equations. 25 pounds, $68. Okay, now we solve this however you want. Because I'm going for bluegrass, I am going to eliminate the drought resistant. So I'm going to multiply. Let me change colors here so you can see my steps. I'm going to multiply this whole equation by -3. Excuse me. So I've got -3b minus 3d equals -75. I'm going to add it so my d's cancel out. 2b minus 3b is -b equals 68 minus 75 is -7. So 7 pounds of bluegrass.